think that family over everything gets toxic when there's no boundaries and when our intent is transactional. So if we just say family over everything all the time, but there's no boundaries, and then our intent is transactional, that's when the family feuds. And then if we don't have the tools, it's a wrap, right? What's up, y'all? And welcome back to Practice, the podcast where we fuse research and culture to help you develop the mindset, habits, and skills you need in order to live out your purpose with confidence. I'm your host, Coach Rees, and this is episode 10. And today we're talking about family, y'all. Let's go.
We're talking about practice. Not a game. We're talking about practice.
Practices are meant to be competitive. They're meant to be competitive. If your practices aren't more competitive than the games themselves, you're doing the wrong thing.
Mm-hmm. Yo, today is a super special episode because research shows that 56% of podcasts have 10 or fewer episodes. So I'm super stoked because this was a mission that I had for myself, was to be able to get over this hump. And so we are here, and once we get to episode 11, we're going to be popping that many more bottles because it'll be the end of the year. And so I'm super excited to celebrate this, but I'm really excited about this episode, and I ain't even going to hold you. I had to re-record this because the first one just wasn't giving what I needed it to give. So I had to go back to the drawing board and really get after it. We're talking about family, y'all. Family over everything except for boundaries. And I want to dive in. I want to go hard. I want to be transparent and real because navigating family is tough. It's difficult because it includes people. And we know that we have enough problem just dealing with ourselves. So when we put somebody else into the situation and it's family and there's expectations or the boundaries aren't clear, my goodness, it's a lot. And I want to talk about this right now because it's holiday season. Christmas is on Sunday, and Christmas gives that vibe of like it's supposed to be fun and family and cheery and joy, but it ain't that. There's so much going on in the world today that this holiday just it ain't gonna be what it's supposed to be. Like the holidays aren't giving what they're supposed to be giving anymore, and it breaks my heart. I lost my grandmother a couple months ago, and it hurts, to know this would be my first holiday without her. I lost my mom 6 years ago. So this would be like, my fifth or sixth one without her. But, there are people who are suffering, recent suffering. Twitch passed this, last week, so his kids and his wife, and there's a lot of other people that I know who passed just within the last year, within the last months. And so the holidays just don't hit the way that Hallmark says they should hit. And I wanted to do this episode right now because I want to talk about family, but not from the aspect of us having to deal with people who we've lost, but I want to talk about having to deal with people who we're still doing life with, deal with the grieving of like, how do you grieve the loss of somebody who's still alive, right? The loss of that relationship who was family, is family, supposed to be family, whatever it is, right? Because family is complex, it's difficult, it's messy, it is everything. I think family is supposed to be our breeding ground for all the things we desire to be out in the rest of the world. Like, I think that family should be that space that I get to show up holistically and be me and be myself and be naked and be authentic and be vulnerable and transparent. I get to test my jokes. I get to test my purpose. I get to test, my character, my personality, and family can give me that nice, raw, honest feedback. And before I go further, I'm going to define this. I define family by relationship and not blood. Okay, I define family by relationship and not blood because we'll see in a little bit, but I'm sure some of you might agree with that. Like, yeah, family is relationship and not just blood. But I think family should be that space where we get to test out the things before we put them out into the world, because the world is cruel and it's just not always the nicest place. And so family should be the people that we're able to do life with that helps equips us with strength and wisdom and nourishment and love and loyalty and trust. But it also is a space that we get to test out our ability to navigate difficulties and navigate challenges in conflict resolution and conflict management. Family should be the space that we have the ability to grow our emotional maturity and our emotional confidence. And we are able to then take that from our family unit out into our friends and our confidants and our mentors and our acquaintances and our community and villages, because our family has nourished and prepared us and equipped us with the ability to do that. And so, family over everything except for boundaries. So our quote for this episode is family over everything. Where did this even come from? I couldn't even tell you. I looked it up and I couldn't find, it's like anonymous. Family over everything. FOE. It's a saying, it's a tattoo, it's a shirt, it's a basketball team, it's a culture, it's a movement, it's a everything. Family over everything. But I also think it's toxic, and we're going to talk about that. But before we do, the theme song for this episode is Family Feud by Jay-Z and Beyonce. And I promise you, I tried to find some other artists, but I just really rock heavy with them. And the song, it fits. Okay, the song just fits. So Family Feud by Jay-Z on his 444 album. Bruh drops this bar. He says, nobody wins when the family feuds. Psh, period. Nobody wins when the family feuds, right? We all screwed because we never had the tools. So this literally goes back to what I was just talking about, is like, family should be the space where we're able to get tested and tried and true and build the strength. But unfortunately, if we don't have the tools for reconciliation, we don't have the tools for communication, we don't have the tools for conflict management, then family then becomes a space that doesn't equip us, hardens our heart, and prevents us from being able to be that much more, I think, sometimes where we're supposed to be out in the rest of the world. Now, again, I'm talking about family by relationship, but also our immediate family and our blood family. That ends up being the space where we get hurt first. Those are our first hurts. I've talked about this before, right? Like our family, more times than not our parents, our mom and our dad, or our moms, or however you describe it, the people we were born to, ends up being the our first set of hurts. And so that kind of shapes how we see the rest of the world, and then influences folks like myself to say family is more blood than relationship, or more relationship than blood. And I will tell you right here, right now, I am working this out in my own heart as I speak. And I think that's why this episode was so hard for me to record. I promise you, I recorded 50 minutes before this, because it's difficult, y'all. It's difficult. Because family means, I get it. Family over everything. I get it. But again, you have to have boundaries in place over your heart. You have to guard your heart. Other people have to guard their heart, right? So there needs to be a sense of clear expectations. There needs to be a sense of clear communication of what that really means and looks like for you and the people you do life with. So, your girl almost started crying on that one. Let's keep moving. So the research that I want us to really sink our teeth in, and I really want to be that much better again, because this is practice. We fuse in research and we fuse in culture. So before we dive deeper into the culture, I want us to tap into this research real quick. So there's a concept called familial capital. So familial capital is super fire because there's certain types of capital. It's called the community cultural wealth model. So there's cultural wealth that Black and brown people bring to the table, assets, knowledge, resources that we bring to the table naturally. And one of those forms of capital is our familial capital. And what that really means is we have a sense of cultural wealth that we embody through kinship, right? That we embody through community, our connection to history, our connection to like our memory, our ancestors, that pride, that like where we like that, that Black pride, right? Like whatever piece that you feel like really connects. And for me, one of the ways that I like to express this is through tattoos. Now, if you're listening to this, obviously you can't see it. But if you've seen many pictures of me, I've got some tattoos. And this for me is like my familial capital with my grandmother and my mom. And right here, this says TLC, and it's the legacy will continue. Look at that. I was talking about the album 444 and I got it right here. Unscripted, y'all. Unscripted. Anywho, family history, like this is to me is my family history that pours out through me and who I am and how I show up because of my mother and my grandmother. And you have that same type of capital, right? Like you have that same type of cultural capital that is alive and well in you. And it's important for you to be able to recognize this and recognize that this is something that empowers you. This is something that you can leverage in order to grow in your authenticity, in order to grow in your self-awareness, is looking back. And I know for some people, that's not always the easiest. If you've been adopted or in foster care, or you don't know your family, you're really so disconnected, or whatever it may be. There's the nurturing, the village that you grew up in, right? The community you grew up in also molded you to be the person the way that you are today. But if you do have connection to your blood family or immediate family in any way, I would encourage you to have conversations with those folks, so that way you can find out that much more about you and who you are, and what sense of pride can you kind of pull from those spaces, or what can you learn from them that'll help you become your best self as you continue to grow and living out your purpose. The other thing that comes with familiar capital is that it helps us develop a healthy connection to people. And so what's cool about this is, and you see this a lot in, again, Black and brown villages, is that like my homeboy, my friend, my homegirl, whatever, we've been friends and cool for so long that she become my cousin. You know what I'm saying? She become my sister. She become my brother, or yeah, that's happened too. My sister became my brother. It's another story. But, or my friend became my sister, whatever it is, right? Like, you've done life with these people for so long, and there's a lot of history there. There's a lot of connection and relationship, that these people who were strangers to friends now became family. And this is something that's a form of capital for us, because it helps us develop a sense of understanding and morals and character. It helps develop our personality. So this is the framework that we're going to be moving with from a research stand. Is I want you to know that your familiar connections are something that you can leverage as a form of capital as you continue to grow and living out your purpose. But I want us to think about now, as we shift into the movie world and we're looking at culture, I want us to think about the series of Fast and the Furious. Fast and the Furious is fire. And if you're like me, every single time I left the theater and I went to drive, I was like, I was doing my thing. But anytime I found out that one of the new movies was coming out, I was excited for so many reasons. And when I really sat and thought about it, it was because of the relational aspect. Like, the family, like Fast and the Furious embodies family over everything, but it also embodies the non-traditional family over everything. And that's what I want to point out here. This is where we really see that familiar capital of people who were strangers to friends to family, in loyalty and trust, were embedded, and we rode that thing out. Think about the gender differences, the racial ethnicity, the culture, all of the differences that show up in this space when you're thinking about the Fast and the Furious. Think about the connectedness, the shared responsibility, the helping. Think about Dom, right? Like Dom, I left every Fast and Furious movie being a better coach, because I want to be like Dom. I wanted to be that person who just embodied that loyalty and trust and respect, and brought people in and made people better, and people wanted to be around because they felt better. And we tackled this large task, and I was strong like Dom. Like that's what I saw. But he embodied loyalty. There's a couple quotes that he says, I don't have friends, I have family. And another thing he says is, you don't turn your back on family even when they do. Okay, Pastor Dom, that's tough right there. Another thing that I thought was fire is, he said, there's a scene where he says, the most important thing in life will always be the people in this room right here, right now. So when I think about the family aspect of loyalty and love and respect and trust and go hardness and kinship and connectedness and food, I think of Fast and Furious. I think it's one of the best examples. I'm sure there's many more, but I think it's one of the best examples that we can see it displayed and played out. So all of that to say is, we love family. We love the family thought process, the family aspect, the family dynamic. Like I'm saying that kind of loosely, but I also think that we've been starting to use the word family a little bit loosely. But deep down inside, I don't care whether you're an introvert or an extrovert, we are wired to do life with people. Now, I mentioned last week that There's a danger in isolation, yes, but there's also time for isolation. There's a time and a place for everything. But as a human being, we are wired to do life with other people. And this is where the concept of family and familial capital comes into play. Before I go further, I want to talk real quick about the difference between social capital and familial capital. Social capital is more so based off of your networks and the networks, right? The networks of people that you know, so that way you can leverage in order to get some other type of gain, more in a kind of professional type, in a professional realm. But I also think the difference between the two is intensity, right? Intimacy, connection, and connectedness on a deeper level. That's that intimacy piece, right? And so I mentioned that because familial capital is something that we need as humans, as the personal part of you, while your social capital is also something that you need for the professional aspect of you. And your familial capital sometimes can become professional capital or social capital as well along the lines. But we're wired for community, y'all. We are wired to do life with people. And what's cool about about family is there's even a scripture in the Bible where it says, you know, a friend sticks close, but a brother is there in times of trouble. So I would say a brother or a sister, whatever. And I think that's why family means so much to us, and why I think Fast and Furious is such a great example amongst other things, is it shows that, like, in a time of trouble, who am I calling? I should be able to call my brother. And I got a brother, shout out to you, Just, that I know that I could call in a time of trouble. Just hands down. Absolutely. No doubt about it. And that's what family is for. That's why it should be family over everything. The other piece is families are supposed to's, right? Again, going back to Fast and Furious, it's the people that we're supposed to be able to trust, the people that's supposed to be loyal to us, supposed to be able to show up in times of trouble, the supposed to, right? Our parents are supposed to, our mom, our dad, or whatever are supposed to. But the thing that sucks is they don't always. And that's why I call it is the supposed to's, is because this is where the hurt comes in. And this is where, if you don't insert boundaries, this is where the damage is done. This is where the family feuds. And if we don't have the tools to be able to be healthy, to heal ourselves, to have reconciliation, to be able to have conflict management, if we don't have those tools, the family will feud and it'll be a wrap. And I think that TV has done a great job of helping us romanticize, right? Romanticize the unrealistic expectations of what it means to be and have a family, right? Like, I think about the 2-parent household, the traditional, for lack of better words, mom and dad and 2 kids and maybe a dog. And then you have the friend that came over. I think of Boy Meets World. And, you know, you never really saw Sean's family, but Sean was always over at Corey's house, you know, like that was always their thing. And then you had Mr. Oh boy across the fence, Mr. Feeney, you know, always stuck his head up and over. He was kind of part of their family in a weird way. And him and Corey, just random. Anyways, I think about the Huxtables. I think about Family Matters. And you think about Urkel. Did Urkel have family? I don't know. But he was like a part of their family, right? And then you think about Sister and how their families ended up blending together. And then you had Roger, and Roger was a part of their family. And I've had some major Roger moments in my life where I've been Roger, I've been Sean, I've been, you know, Steve Urkel. And I think, and I'm just being flat out transparent, as somebody who was raised in an only parent household. I have siblings, but I wasn't raised with them. I sought out family in other spaces. So I became the Roger to other families. I became the Sean. I became the Urkel to try to be in, you know, sort of fit in to get the family that I saw on TV. I'm having therapy right here, right now with y'all. I told y'all, this is just as much for me as it is for you. So I don't know if anybody else can relate to that, but that's how, you know, family has been kind of molded for me, you know, in my mind. I also think about Fresh Prince or That's So Raven, or The Proud Family, right? All these different shows are based around family that help us dream up or romanticize what family is supposed to look like or be sometimes. And some of their conflicts are big, but not really. Anyways, they give us sort of an idea, right? But now the world looks extremely different than what it did, a long time ago, where houses look different, family makeup looks extremely different than before. But I don't want to hang on that for too long. But the point of that is to really just say that I think that sometimes TV sets us up for unrealistic expectations. And when you grow up, you're like, wait, that's not how it's supposed to be. This ain't it. Like, this ain't like, huh? Right? Like you get hurt. So first you kind of get hurt from the like people in your real life. Then you get hurt by the people in TV because your real life don't really look like the TV. It's a whole mess. Shout out to therapy. Moving on. So I think that family over everything gets toxic when there's no boundaries and when our intent is transactional. So if we just say family over everything all the time, but there's no boundaries, and then our intent is transactional, that's when the family feuds. And then if we don't have the tools, it's a wrap, right? So if there's no boundaries in play, we need boundaries with people regardless of who they are. Your spouse, your parents, your kids, whatever. We need boundaries. And if it's just family, well, I'm family, I'm supposed to be, I'm family. Like if you are abusing your family title, especially if it's immediate family or blood family, or even, family that is, becomes family through, just kinship and relationship. If you abuse that because of your lack of ability or wanting to abide by somebody's boundaries, you're not being toxic. So you can't just say, oh, what happened to family over everything? Well, you're abusing that role, which is a privilege of being in my family. Like, I really think any type of relationship, especially a family relationship or a title, is an honor and a privilege. You don't just get to have access to anybody regardless of your role. Period. Like, I don't care who you are. Like, I think that in and of itself is abusive to think that we have a certain amount of access to people, or it's a toxic thought process as well. And this is where, I think a lot of parents, when their kids get older and now you have an adult child, and adult children decide to not have a relationship with their parents because of something that their parents have done. Like, you just think because I'm your mom, your dad, your whatever, like, but you don't get to. And I get that may not make sense immediately, and you might be mad at me for it. It is what it is, but that there's boundaries in play. Like, you just don't get to have access to anybody. And especially if you are not willing to be healthy. And I'll use an example again from my own personal life is, my dad and I have a fantastic relationship. He's my guy. He is fulfilling the role of being a father. And I remember we had to work to get here. We had to work. My dad is my guy, but we had to work. And we've put in a good 13 years, 15 years to get to where we're at now. And I'm 32. So you can do the math on that, but we've had to do intentional, hard, deep work of both healing in order to be able to have the relationship that we have. We talk every day. We hang out all the time. We go to concerts. We travel. Like, that's my guy. And I remember when he wasn't. I remember when I didn't have a relationship with him. And it hurt and it pained me and it saddened me. And I had to get to a space that I was willing to do some healing, but also he had to do some healing and he had to do some reflection. I had to set some boundaries in that process for us to be able to get to where we're at now. And the reason why I bring this up is because I'm an adult and I get to control who has access to me regardless of who you are. And there are a lot of people who force themselves on people regardless of the kind of the situation and the role. But one thing that I like to bring up about this too is this is kind of different. I'm still working out this thought process and I don't have children of my own. However, I've looked at some research around this of like, calling our kids our best friends or calling our parents, our best friends. And I'm guilty of it. I used to call my dad like my best friend, or my mom was like my best friend. But when I really started to sit and think about it, she was just being what a mother is supposed to be. Like, my dad is just being what a dad is supposed to be. And the thing is, there's a lot of roles that people play in our lives that have similar feelings, right? Again, with the intimacy is in platonic and it is in romantic relationships. Obviously, it looks different. It should look different, but connectedness, trust, it still feels the same way. Joy, happiness, it's all right. It's the same feelings, but my dad's not my best friend. My dad is my dad. My mom wasn't my best friend. Like, my mom is my mom, and they fulfilled those roles of what it was supposed to look and feel like, that also may give me the same type of feeling I get from my best friend. If that makes sense, right? Or that, because there still should be a certain type of boundaries. Like, that's still my dad. There's still a certain part of respect, or that's still my mom. There's still different, things that happen. There should be blocks, if that makes sense. I don't have the best verbiage at this moment, but I think this also can become pretty toxic when we're looking at, and this is maybe a little off topic, but bear with me, when we're looking at, like, parents calling their little daughter, oh yeah, that's my little best friend. But like I get it, but I think there's more to the story. Not necessarily the story, but I think there's more to it, to where it's probably not the most healthiest thing, to where that should be like, just when you embody that role, like that, you become the best of that. You're that, like, just be that mom, like be that aunt. And that's what it should be, versus like we have oftentimes a altered idea or an altered reality or altered presence of somebody who's supposed to be, that dad or that mom or that auntie or uncle, whatever, right? Like, they're not fulfilling what it should mean to be that thing. So then we try to make that thing a something else thing, and it shouldn't be. Like, that's not their role. So then you have, different expectations on a role for somebody that it shouldn't be met. I hope that makes sense. If it doesn't, let me know. We could talk about it. And I know that there's research and different things behind that too, when it comes to family systems and codependency and interdependency and all of that fun stuff that goes around it. But I digress, and I'm moving forward. So here's my thought though. I think that family has become really mainstream and watered down. Here's what I mean. I think the term family has become mainstream and watered down, because we went from just like likes and friends to that not being enough, to it having to be love and family. Like, likes and friends got played out. So then we said, okay, now let's have love and family. And now those are the things. So family has now become watered down in mainstream. Like, think about, there's businesses, and when jobs recruit you, or even as a basketball coach, right? It's like, yeah, we have a family atmosphere, can be a part of our family, or at jobs, like, this is a family here. Like, it's not, because this is transactional based, and we have to stop treating transactional situations as it's something to have a familiar vibe. Stop trying to put familial vibes around transactional situations, because when something happens that disrupts that familiar vibe, like, that, it just ain't gonna work. It ain't family no more. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's business till it ain't, it's family till it ain't. And so it's really important to make sure that we're not muddling the familiar aspect. We're not muddling, right? Like, that friendship, like, just really call it what it is. Like, you can be a nice person, we could be cool, but that don't have to make us family. That don't have to make us friends, because the expectation is there. And then when the expectations get missed, now I'm sad. And it's like, whoa, wait a minute. I thought we was friends. I thought we was family. I thought we was bros. But it ain't, And so I think, right, there's a lot of, especially in sports, like, and again, I am guilty of this, and I've had to grow out of this as a coach. We had shirts, family, right across the chest. But what happened when old girl didn't play? You know what I'm saying? Like, her and her family had been beefing. It wasn't family then. What happened when, something goes down? What happens when, like, season's over and now you don't talk to each other anymore? What happens when there's dissension? What happens when all these other different things, that are transactional based, especially in sports, is transactional based? I get that you want the culture within your workspace, within your teams, with all these things. I get that you want a vibe or an aspect of it, but I think calling it family is abusive and it's toxic, and we got to get rid of it. There are many other things we can say. We have a caring environment, and here's how we do that. We prioritize communication. We respect your boundaries. We prioritize your psychological well-being. We prioritize your psychological safety. All these things can exist within a team, within a job, with any workspace, whatever it is, but you don't have to label it family in order to get it, because family's not safe for everybody. The word family is not safe for everybody. You know, it's just not, because some people's family structures and upbringing wasn't it. So when they think of family, they're like, I'm good. It's now like a trigger. I'm cool off that, because you're going to try to use that term to leverage and demean and manipulate me in a way because we're family. You know what I'm saying? Like, so we've gotten to a space where we've normalized something that is supposed to be cherished and prized at a different level. And that's what I mean by thinking we've watered it down. I mean, I even think of social media cats who, you know, hey besties, hey family, hey da da da, I don't know you, you know, but like we tried, and I get it, but where's the sanctity? You know what I'm saying? Where's that sacredness of like, this is my, not everybody is your ace, boom, fam, you know what I'm saying? Just because you have this title, even in somebody's life, you know what I'm saying? Just because you got an auntie and an uncle and cousins and blah, 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 don't mean they actually live up to the standard. And I think that's what I was talking about too, when it came to, or comes to, you know, thinking about my dad. Like, he's now living up to what it means to be a dad. And to me, that is God's way of him showing me God's love. It's through the redemption, through the reconciliation, through the consistency, through the unconditional love that God is displaying that to me in my own personal journey, right, through my dad. And I get to experience that one-on-one, but he's living up to his title. And oftentimes people don't live up to their titles. And if somebody don't live up to their title to me, I ain't calling it is. I'm not calling you it. If you you know what I'm saying, you're supposed to be a leader or whatever, and you have a specific title, like we think, let me go backwards. We think just because somebody has a specific title, they're entitled. We think just because you have a title, that makes you entitled to. Just because you're a leader, that makes you entitled to respect. Earned. Just because you're my fill in the blank, you know what I'm saying? Whatever the family dynamic you want to plug into that, you still have to live up to it. Just because I'm a partner doesn't mean that I get to just be whatever. I still have to live up to my expectations of a partner every single day. As a sister, as a friend, as a daughter, I have to live up to those things that I want, because it's an honor to do life with other people. And I think that because we have watered these things down and the expectations are so low, people no longer cherish these roles unless you make them, unless you have boundaries. So it can't be family over everything without having boundaries. So really, when it comes down to it, like, forcing family is toxic. Forcing family is toxic. Forcing friendship is toxic. Forcing anything is toxic. It's abusive, and it shouldn't be, right? There needs to be consent. There needs to be something lived up to. There needs to be intention. There needs to be intimacy. There needs to be consistency. There needs to be psychological safety. There needs to be familiarity. There needs to be connectedness. There needs to be organic as well. You can't, anything forced is gross. Anything forced breaks. But when something's organic, it just makes it that much better. Except for produce sometimes, like, I don't really know if it makes that much better. It's just more expensive. So I'm gonna just get the regular bananas, but I digress. So here's a great example that I think that I see all the time, and this kind of hits what I'm talking about, friends. But I was watching this interview of Omarion on The Breakfast Club, and he started talking about how they basically forced them to be brothers. Bruh. When I was listening to this, I was like, I gotta use this because he is proving my point right here. Y'all, please take a second and listen to Omarion in his interview.
Like, you guys were everywhere together. You guys grew up with each other. Yeah. So how is it that you guys really don't mesh and speak and communicate? And when they do, it's usually, I haven't heard you say really much bad about them, anything bad about them, but them talking bad about you. So how does that work? Because you all are still on tour, or were on.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a challenging question, just because, you know, there were a lot of people, you know, like, let's just take the concept of brotherhood, right? Correct. You know what I mean? Everybody has a different version of that, you know, unfortunately, because some people don't actually have siblings. You know what I mean? It means different things to different people. So I would say, in one aspect through our journey, you know, we were put together to be brothers. You know what I'm saying? But I don't think in essence we were. You know what I'm saying? I think that, you know, there were a lot of people, you know, that made sure that we connected and then disconnected. You know what I mean? You know, certain people on our journey, it's almost like we were made to be brothers to be secret enemies. You know what I mean? And there's only certain stories that could kind of, you know, embody like what that means, you know, because I believe in real brotherhood, jealousy doesn't exist. You know, you might feel like, okay, well, dang, look at my bro, he going up. I want to be inspired, but it never makes you vindictive. It never makes you jealous. It never makes you go past a certain point.
So if you hear this, he says a couple things. He says they were put together to be brothers, right? Like it was a setup. They weren't the Jackson 5. It was a setup. They were put together to be brothers to fall apart. My goodness. So this is like a team. When you try to put your team together to be a family, but you don't have in all the other structure, it's going to fall apart. When you try to force family or you force any relationship without boundaries, communication, emotional maturity, emotional confidence, it's going to fall apart. Again, Jay-Z said, nobody wins when the family feuds. We're all screwed because we don't have the tools. If you aren't emotionally confident, if you aren't emotionally mature, you don't have the ability to handle and get us to reconciliation through conflict management, we're screwed. And Omarion talks about this here, and I love it, but he also talks about how, like, people have different definitions of brotherhood, and you can see the difference. And I felt this, like, I have blood sisters, but we don't really have any relationship. But I also have sisters and brothers who aren't blood, but our relationship still is major different because I didn't grow up in a household with brothers or sisters. So it looks majorly different than somebody who may have. And I think Omarion points that out again to where, you know, we have a lot of these notions about brotherhoods and sisterhoods and all these things, but it means something different to everybody because some people really had to live with it, and then some people just had it through other spaces. Like I still never really lived with anybody in that way to be able to fully embody it in the way that sometimes it's forced on other folks. The other thing that he said that I thought was really cool is he said that they were made to be brothers just to be secret enemies, and it was the people around them. Boy, he said they were made to be brothers but felt like they were just to be secret enemies because the people around them, like the folks around them, influenced them to disconnect. Like they were connected to disconnect. Like I know y'all can look at your life and some of your friendships and think some of the same thing, and some of your family things, dynamics, and think some of the exact same. Like how? Like who else is around that is speaking into these spaces again where family's supposed to be here? You shouldn't be able to say nothing to me without expecting me to say something over here. You know what I'm saying? Like you shouldn't expect that you just have the ability to pull me down or them or whatever. And without it, like, nah, like that shouldn't even be the case. And unfortunately, right, that sounds like that was the case here with the B2K drama. And we've kind of seen how that's played out if you've paid attention. But he mentioned like real brothers don't get jealous. Like when you see one of your brothers going off, you should be inspired, like, yeah. He didn't do that, but that was my definition. But it doesn't make you vindictive. And I think that that's true. And that's something that I think is important to recognize, right? Like, is jealousy shouldn't be something that happens within that space. Like, I can't be psychologically safe with you if I feel like you're jealous of me, period. Like, I cannot be psychologically safe with you if I feel like you're jealous of me. It just won't happen. And because your energy is going to precede you and mine is going to precede me, and we are going to clash and the family will feud. And if we don't have the tools, it ain't going to work. All right, y'all. So as we wind down, I want to point out and make sure that you guys follow Nidra on IG. She dropped something recently, and she said, due to generational trauma, some people don't have elders. They have people in their family who have grown older but not wiser. I'll wait. Due to generational trauma, some people don't have elders. They have people in their family who have grown older but not wiser. My goodness gracious. Just whole mic drop. I even got a mic. Here's why this is so fire. And I read it. I fell I got weak in the knees. Because I've experienced this personally, and I believe that everybody has probably experienced this personally. And again, just because somebody is older doesn't mean that they have the emotional maturity and the emotional confidence to be able to handle adversity, to be able to handle conflict, to be able to have conflict management, to be able to recognize, okay, boom, when the family feuds, do we have the tools? If somebody's older and they don't have the tools, it's going to result in a clash, a forever clash. And that's where boundaries must go up in order for you to protect your peace, in order for you to be able to assess, is this a situation where I need to protect my peace and pursue reconciliation, protect my peace and learn how to have conflict management? Because a lot of times we just go, I got to protect my peace and leave it there, but we don't pursue reconciliation at the same time, protecting my peace and having my boundaries, but also assessing, do I still need to learn conflict management? Is this situation something that's going to teach me how to manage conflict, how to communicate and have difficult conversations, right? I think that that's something important, and it's unfortunate when you don't have, or when somebody sits in an elder position but isn't wise and isn't able to pass down wisdom to you, or isn't able to model what it's like to be, an elder. And I think that's why a lot of us, especially, millennials and Gen Zs, are just frankly feel let down by our elders in every way, is because we are seeing them not display emotional confidence, emotional maturity, emotional intelligence, however you want to say it. And it's unfortunate. So age, like Aaliyah said, ain't nothing but a number in this way, because unfortunately you're getting older, you're having more birthdays, but you haven't been able to heal your intrapersonal trauma that's preventing you from being able to be the wise old elder that you should be, that the people, your familiar aspect needs. And this is where being able to choose your family, I think, is really important, and being able to say who has access to you becomes that much more important. So this is where I really think you're right. Forcing family without boundaries and proper communication tools and authenticity becomes a threat to my existence. If you are trying to force family and without having boundaries and proper communication tools, and being authentic and pursuing with emotional confidence and emotional maturity, that becomes a threat to my existence and my purpose. And I ain't having it. And neither should you. She also talked about a couple other things. I'm going to throw them up here real quick, and I want us to just look at these. And please make sure you follow her and give her support. She's got a couple books out, so make sure you cop those as well. You are not alone. There's no such thing as a perfect family. Please hear that. I think that we definitely see this again with social media, which is great too. Like, you see the dope, you see all the pictures of everybody like, oh, their success, their fame, their money. But I've got a couple examples that are like, whoa, like Master P and Romeo right now are beefing on Instagram. Just out loud. We've been knowing Romeo, make your elbow swing, and Master P, you know what I'm saying, woo woo, for forever. You know what I'm saying? Like, we feel like we part of their family. Hooty hoo. But they're beefing, like, I thought they was cool. I didn't know, because I don't know them. But again, that's the illusion that social media can give. But also what we see is, like, Romeo was dealing with the pain of losing his sister. Master P's in with the pain of losing a daughter, and I know firsthand what that feels like with losing a sister and my dad. So I get the grieving, but it sucks that it has to happen right on, like, in front of everybody's face. But again, no family is perfect regardless of how much money, that anybody, or fame that anybody has. The other, think of like Kirk Franklin is his son. Last year, Kirk cussed him out. He said, "Don't you ever disrespect me." We heard Kirk turn into Plies, and it was like, everybody was like, "Get your son, Kirk." Like, you know what I'm saying? It just is what it is. But again, nobody's perfect, which is the whole point of being human, I think, is to display that we're not perfect. But again, no family is perfect. You even got like Dr. Dre and his daughter were in the news within the last year. Think about Nick Cannon and his like 12 kids with 6 different babies' moms. Like, definitely, you know what I'm saying? And another thing is, Jay-Z talks about also, how money can come between you and your family. So no family unit, because we as humans are imperfect, my family therefore will also be imperfect. I am imperfect. You are imperfect. Therefore, whatever interactions we have will be imperfect. And so it is our duty to make sure that we are doing the right and best thing to have healthy interactions. If you are not going to be healthy, you can't do life with me, period. If you are not going to pursue healthy communication, if you're not going to pursue healthy relationships and intent and have a healthy and healed heart, we can't do life together, because then you become a threat to my existence and my well-being and my psychological and physical safety in my nervous system, and it just ain't worth it. The next thing she says, you're not obligated to have relationships with unhealthy people. Look, I said it, then I read it. You are not obligated to do it. So don't feel like you have to. You don't have to like every person in your family. You don't. Period. You cannot create healthy relationships with people who are not interested in having healthy relationships. Look, y'all, I promise you, I found it, I read it, I'm spitting, and these are facts, right? And I love that she's saying this along with me saying it, because you're hearing it from multiple sources, and you don't have to feel guilty for not wanting to engage with people you don't want to. Like, you just don't, and you shouldn't. So shame off you. You don't have to feel guilty about any of it. You're not betraying anybody by speaking your truth. You're honoring yourself. And that's the whole point of authenticity, humility, and self-awareness. Honor your truth, and then figure out how you can move forward. Figure out who are the people that you want to do life with. Who are the people that are going to honor you and honor their role in your life as well, and vice versa, right? Because you got to be able to give back that same respect to other people. And the last two, right? It's okay to be different from other people in your family. I think this is huge. This is really big. And again, this is you holding on to your authenticity and your self-awareness and saying, okay, I'm different. That doesn't mean it's bad, but this allows you to grow in discovering who you are and how you want to be and how you want to show up in the world. But this also goes full circle back to why Fast and Furious is amazing, is because you may be different from the people in your born immediate blood family, but you can also go find another family somewhere else, right? Like Fast and Furious by your connections and your passions and your purpose. And this is why, sorry if I got something on my lip, sports teams are amazing, or bands, or the theater, or whatever it is, because you can create these familia-like cultures and spaces and communities in other avenues when you are bringing along all these other tools. And the last thing that she said is you can create, my goodness, that's funny. She said you can create family relationships with people who you are not related to. Non-scripted, I will tell you guys that, but 100% you can do that. So use Fast and Furious as an example. Use other people that are around you and recognize and see, are these people being consistent? Are they displaying loyalty? Are they displaying trust? In what is it that you want from other people that you're also able to give? You know, don't expect people to just give you a bunch without you being able to give in return. Be clear with your expectations, be clear with your boundaries, and recognize, is this a situation that is calling for me to protect my peace right? Protect my peace and pursue conflict management and pursue the ability to have high communication skills within difficult situations. Protect my peace and insert my boundaries, right? Protect my peace and receive reconciliation, or protect my peace and move on without closure. Only you can decide what type of situation that is for you. But I'll also say this, y'all. I believe that family should provide you with psychological safety, the feeling of love and joy and peace, admiration and value. You should be where you're valued and celebrated and not tolerated. I feel that family should be a space that you have connection and familiarity, that supports your purpose, that supports your existence, that gives you solace and peace of mind, and makes you feel at home. Home is where your family is, right? Home is where your love is. And we should really get away from forcing this on people and allow it to organically happen. And so I say all of that to say that it's family over everything until it's not. It's like, no. Yeah, it's family over everything except for boundaries. Get some boundaries. Get yourself the tools that you need in order to have organic relationships, healthy relationships. Because when the family feuds, nobody wins. And we are at a stage in a day and age where everybody should be able to access the tools, because one, they're really just on Instagram, or YouTube or TikTok or whatever, where you can get the tools And if you need further, that's where therapy comes into play. That's where mentorship, that's where friendship, that's where just talking to somebody so you can get healthy, so you can do life with people, because you deserve to do life with healthy people. So family over everything when they're healthy, when boundaries are established, when there's communication, when there's trust and love and loyalty, commitment and consistency and peace and psychological safety, but never at the expense of you having to sell yourself out, never at the expense of you having to deny who you are in order to have that familiar capital. So here are your drills and skills. I'm gonna run through these really, really fast. Number 1, establish boundaries, period. Number 2, assess, do you have psychological and physical safety in the spaces that you are doing life with? If your nervous system is telling you otherwise, listen to it, period. Listen to your nervous system. And number 3, analyze how you show up in these relationships. What is it that you're carrying with you? What is it that you're preparing yourself for? I know for myself, as a lesbian in a lot of spaces, historically was like, can I be my full me here? And if not, then now it's like, it just is, I be forgetting that I don't have no hair and I'm a lesbian. I'd be like, oh shoot, like I be forgetting until you remind me, but that's not everybody's case, right? But think about it. What are the things you have to prepare yourself for when you are going into and having to show up into these spaces, especially during the holidays? Recognize that. Like, what is it that you're carrying with you? And do you even still want to carry that anymore? So I appreciate y'all. I'm glad that I redid this episode because the first one just wasn't giving what it was supposed to give. So, whatever your holidays bring for you, whatever this season of life, whenever you watch this, whatever it does for you on this day, I hope that you're able to have peace. I hope that you're able to experience joy. I hope that if you have any relationships that you want reconciled, that you are able to do that. I hope that on your grieving journey of grieving the loss of people who are still alive, that you find peace, whether there's reconciliation or it is, ending with no closure. Regardless, I hope that you are surrounded with love in some way. I hope that you are able to experience life to its fullest. I hope that your hope is renewed, that your optimism is renewed, and your psychological well-being is high. This is Practice the Podcast, where we fuse research and culture to help you develop the mindset, habits, and skills in order to live out your purpose with confidence. I'm your host, Coach Rees, and that is it for episode 10. I love y'all. Peace.